I'm writing this from Atlanta, Georgia. Myself and my mother had a very unusual experience last February 2020, right before COVID hit. We were going wedding dress shopping in a town nearby. It was a cool day, the perfect temperature for a girl's day out, despite it being in winter. We had a full day planned. Champagne, cocktails, lots of treats. But something happened that has compelled me to put pen to paper, so to speak, to make sense of something gruesome and deadly that tarnished what should have been one of the best days I've had. I just tried on my wedding dress and had it all picked out. My mother and I were leaving the shop feeling blissful. Everything was working out. That's when we noticed this awful burning smell, like sulfur. It was a cold day, so the smell was very out of place and very unusual. When we looked behind us, we saw nothing, so we kept on walking. However, when we got to the car, we both noticed the smell had gotten much worse. I checked to see my tires and everything all seemed fine. The next thing I heard was my mother screaming. She grabbed onto me. Behind us was a terrifying creature, such that I had never seen before. It was serpentine in appearance, maybe about 8 feet long. But instead of the unusual patterned snake, which I was accustomed to seeing, this thing was red, like it had been skinned. It was repulsive. In addition to that, this thing had long protrusions sticking out of its head. It appeared to have multiple sets of teeth or fang-like protrusions sticking out of its mouth. The creature was moving around in circles around the parking lot, coming out of the nearby woods, apparently stopping and smelling the ground. The next thing I heard, my mother was retching behind the car, wailing, evidently horrified by the sight. I dropped my dress on the ground, and Beast slithered up right next to it. It moved the dress, leaving a stain. Eventually, I don't know if this was a snake or what, but I'll call it a snake for the continuity of the story. It left us both dumbfounded, confused, and completely terrified. We got into the car immediately, calling the cops. They got there and the cop was drinking coffee, asked if we had smoked any weed. He was definitely a very staunch individual, blamed it all on the weed, even though we hadn't had any and didn't even smoke. We told him we had saw this thing and felt lucky to be alive. We were both terrified for anyone else who came across it. Especially right around where it went back into in the woods was this patch of field where there were more houses. We both felt like this thing could be a danger if anybody else ran into it. I even showed him my wedding dress and the blood mark, but he just dismissed it. Needless to say, we went home deeply agitated and distressed. Obviously, I didn't wear that dress and couldn't get my money back either, as it was badly damaged. I burned it, hoping that the ritual would burn the memory right out of my head. But it didn't, and it hasn't. I know it's probably extreme of me to do that, but this sighting affected me. The creature and the experience still very much haunt my memory to this day, and I often have nightmares of visions of it sleeping in wake hours. It's unbearable. I'm also carrying a child now, and have no idea how traumatic this memory is, how it could be affecting my unborn child. The only thing I know of that I've heard is that the smell of sulfur is often accompanied with the sighting of demons. Did I see a real-life demon? I don't know. But I beg you, if you have any information on what this creature is or has been, please get in touch. I'm putting together a strong case and submitting it. I hope that this matter will be investigated thoroughly, and maybe will be solved eventually. Anyway, I still have sleepless nights and often feel overwhelmed by the sheer memory. I hope I can one day heal and get better. I do not want to live in a world where such creatures exist and haunt my memory. For the sake of my child, I will fight this creature until it is found. I beg anyone who reads this and encounters something similar to come forward. It was 1972, and I was on a field trip with some fellow classmates. Being only 18 then, and thought I knew everything. This was in Denver, Colorado. A lot of forestry. Plenty of room to do whatever we wanted. At night, when the teachers and the rest of everybody else was asleep, a few of us seniors would go to a quiet space and smoke weed. On this one night, it was just me and my friend Margaret and her boyfriend. We were talking about the latest music, and at the time, glam rock was just a booming thing. It was an exciting time to be young. Style was everything, and expressing who you were individually was an art, more so than today. No longer did we feel the need to be shamed or be like everybody else. Well, as it happens on this one night, we saw something very strange in the woods. We were walking, I would say briskly, back to the camp after our hash, when we saw what appeared to be a scarecrow hanging from the trees above us. It was pretty freaky, and might I add, disturbing. It was around the same time the Manson family and I feared that some crazy commune or cult were going to jump out and attack. But we still kept still, just watching. It was dressed like a man and was most definitely a scarecrow. Its face, though, was painted like a clown, and it had the face of a clown that would visit a kid's birthday. That made the sight even more disturbing. I felt sick and grabbed Margaret and James, her boyfriend, tried to get them to go back to camp. They just stood transfixed. Something terrifying then happened. The creature moved its head down, stared down at us, with its clown-like face, smiled and laughed at us. It was a menacing, cold laugh, one that seemed to send hair on our bodies upward in shock and terror. We all screamed and were spooked. We went and ran, but when we did, we found we hit a dead end. The creature did a 360 turn and was now staring at us again, laughing. Now it began to turn into more of a shadow. We turned again and found ourselves at yet another dead end. This is it. We were going to die here, by this horror. I didn't know what to do or where to hide. There were no cell phones at the time anyway, so no teacher or parent or officer could ever be contacted. We felt so helpless. We kept running, and luckily this time made it to our camp, where everybody was fast asleep. Not sure if it was a bad trip or if we had actually seen what we saw. But in the morning, we all agreed that it was real, and we had seen something dreadful and horrific. We all agreed not to tell anybody, as they would either think we were drug-crazed or crazy, and we were all on the verge of going to college. We didn't need any bad rap. But that experience changed us. We could no longer be around each other. That memory of the incident was written across all of our faces. I truly believe we experienced something paranormal out in those woods. It's been nearly 50 years now, and I still can't look at a scarecrow or a clown to this day. Some things are just not the same anymore. I wonder if I was crazy or if this was a bad trip. But I hope one day I'll find answers, before I die, about what it was. Maybe, just maybe, it's still out there. I'm not sure I can ever forget that night, even though it was over 20 years ago. I was at college in Liverpool, England. I was walking home from my part-time job at the coffee shop. The night was still, and I felt so grateful to have a job that could make me self-sufficient and look after myself. No one was going to tell me otherwise. I mean, my job was awesome. I loved being a barista. As I was walking home, I went to call my then boyfriend to tell him to put on some dinner for me. Cell phones were pretty much just out, and my phone then was this huge clunky thing. Didn't have much battery or network. I wasn't surprised then when it didn't reach him, so I just shrugged it off and kept walking. My usual walk home was through residential streets. Usually, they were abuzz with activity as they were student housing. But on this night, all seemed deathly still. I remember laughing a bit, thinking It was some weird apocalypse movie. I thought of a joke to tell my boyfriend. I felt like a proper white girl in a horror movie walking home. Although I had gotten used to walking everywhere by myself, I wasn't freaked out or anything. As I turned to go on one of the roads, I realized it was closed as there had been some major cracks in the road's surface. I heard whispers of something odd happening during the night, and residents had awoke to a screeching, screaming sound, only to find a huge hole in the residential street. I remapped my route and just went an alternative one. This route was a little darker, so I decided to walk more briskly. When I was about halfway up this path, which I was surrounded by woodland and foliage, I heard something. Now, this something was whimpering, all the way to my right. I had a fear it was a child or dog, so I looked over instinctively. However, it was no child or dog, but rather something unlike anything I'd ever seen in my life. It was a creature, about the size of a dog, but with no fur or skin. Rather disgusting looking. Its legs were small and webbed, and it looked like it had no idea how to move. Then, to answer my questions, I see this large thing pulling out of its head, and as this thing moved along, it kind of moved all around. I know it's hard to explain, but it moved kind of like it glided. I had the impression it could even fly had it moved right. Its face was disturbing, kind of mashed in with dead skin, dark, large black eyes, and its mouth opened to reveal a lizardish mouth, small fangs, and large cave-like opening for food. I had watched enough nature documentaries to know the damage this creature could do with just a small amount of bite. Not taking my eyes away from this strange creature, eventually, I got away. I still remember this incident to this day and have never really forgotten it. I feel grateful to be alive and wonder what could have happened often. Not many people believed me when I told them about my experience. I know it's true.